What's up, Maestro? Hey, Corel. Good to see you. How are you doing today? Sorry about the loud clicking here. I'm sorry. I wish it was less blah. Yeah, we'll see how much I stumble over this book, because it is a lot of ye olde English. Ooh, I like the art on the inside. I wonder if that's art I could use for the image in the background. Let's see the copyright of that. Okay. Sadly, I cannot use the image on the inside of the cover because it is 7 years old. Oh yes, sorry by the way, when we raided Bafiki yesterday, or not yesterday, on Sunday, I noticed that one of the mods deleted your little message, and it's like, oh come on, he always has the greatest greeting messages. I love your greeting messages. They're fun. Definitely works well with story time too. I'm going to switch over to the image that I'm going to be using. Oh no! Hey, Kickin'. How are you doing today? Oh yeah, I noticed it. I know. Them darn cops. And we better be careful too, because we're reading Robin Hood. Let's hope that Nightbot doesn't delete my story time because of all them wrongdoings. I honestly don't know if Ooh, your family's playing? That is exciting. Has any of your family ever played before? And when is it going to be? Is it going to be today or sometime this week? Yeah, the only one of my family who would even play D&D with me is my sister, and we did play for about 2 years, I think, but it was very clear that the DM's style of game did not coincide with mine, but especially not hers. Oh, it's on Sunday. Oh, nice. I mean, that's even knowing the very basics. That's a lot more than my first group that I was in. It was my sister and me, and then 2 people that I was in plays with. And they had never played before. They didn't know any of the rules. So that's pretty good. Nice. I would love to hear about it. Hey, Maestro. He's doing the whole paw on my shoulder because he wants nuzzles and kisses. He's very cute. You are cute, Maestro. I love you. Interesting. I'm just looking at the beginning of the book. So there are a couple different versions of Robin Hood out there. The two most famous ones are, goodness, I think that the author's last name is Green, and he also did Knights of the Round Table. And both King Arthur and Robin Hood, they weren't originally like written down stories. They were folk tales that people would tell, and so it was very much an around the campfire, or the bard coming and visiting adventurers, bringing tales. Definitely a live performance sort of thing, and so there wasn't like this is specifically the original story, at least not that anybody really knows. But then, ooh, yes, random fact. Ooh, we're doing multiple random facts. Pick a number. I gotta find, aha! It fell over here. No, Robin Hood, why did you fall? Okay, random fact time. Actually, it's 500 pages. Oh, it's not 500 pages. Let's see, we'll go for page number 48. So this will be your first reading. At least 99% of all the species that ever existed have left no trace in the fossil record. Interesting. No scientific experiment has ever been done or could be done to prove that time exists. A little bit of brain bendery. Now we'll go for page 101. Whoa. Some parts of Tasmania are so fertile that the topsoil is 70 feet deep. Wow. Trinity College, Cambridge, has won more Nobel Prizes than the whole of Italy. That's interesting. Whoa, okay. And gold is officially suitable for consumption by vegetarians, vegans, and members of all religious groups. So there are our there's another one. It was right below that is really funny, but it's not appropriate, so I'm not going to read it. But yeah, it's there you go. There's your random facts. Yeah, 3 easy missions. Oh, small dungeon and a town invasion. Nice. Ooh. That would be an interesting diet. The Midas diet. My DM, my first GM actually, mentioned once that you can plan for like 500 possible scenarios, and then your group will choose option 501. Because there was one time we were playing where nice, Scarell. Yeah, there was one campaign where we were coming up to a town, and there was this enormous dragon, like a giant dragon, and it was just lying there. And so, he thought that we were going to go into the town and question people and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm going to go up to the dragon and I'm going to climb on it. And then I'm going to look around for anything. And it had a wound. It was like a hole. And it was so big that my character fell into it. And he's like, I honestly did not expect you guys to do that. So, yeah, I'll be interested to hear how your family goes, especially first time players will sometimes throw you for a loop because, if you've watched a lot of games or if you've played a lot of games, you kind of get the idea of what's expected. But first time players can be like, what am I interested in? I'm going to go for what I'm interested in. What is a BBEG? A BBEG? No, that was a different character, actually. The character that I was playing was a ranger, and she and her sister had a family business where they sold weapons and armor. And my character was the person who made armor, and my sister's character was the one who made weapons. It was a very strange campaign. Oh, okay. Nice. I've never heard that acronym? I think that's what it's called. Never seen that acronym before. Good to know. Like a full, enormous red dragon or like a drake or something like that. Yeah, I have had, actually, that campaign that I was mentioning, we only ever played 2 games. My very first GM was very frustrating because he, oh, nice. Kind of reminds me of, forget her name, but in the Dragonlance Chronicles, she was one of the dragon riders, and so she had sort of a pet dragon. It was a big blue one. But yeah, my first GM was kind of frustrating because I was definitely the most enthusiastic about playing D&D, or in our case, in that game, Pathfinder. And we had our main game, and then he asked me if I'd be interested in a solo. I'm like, totally, I would love to do a solo. And he never wanted to do continue with that one again. And then we had the Sisters campaign, and that went 2 sessions, and then, he wasn't interested in pursuing that. So, it was very frustrating because I wanted to play, and I couldn't. Ooh, enchanted mimic armor. Oh, that's cool. It's been so long since I've read the Dragonlance Chronicles, and definitely I haven't read it since I started playing TTRPGs. So it'll be interesting to go back and reread that and the Legends. Actually, I read the Legends, the Time of the Twins, War of the Twins, and Test of the Twins, which was about Caramon and Roslyn, before I read the Chronicles. So, of course, I knew Caramon as this, a guy that has let himself go. And so going back and reading the Chronicles is like, oh, he was like super fit and gung-ho, whereas, he was the once sung hero, which is definitely not sung anymore. I kind of like the Legends ones a little better, especially the Roslyn parts of the story. Ooh, nice. I bet you definitely get to be a lot more creative with homebrews. Well, I think since we're 15 minutes in, I should probably go ahead and get started, but feel free to keep chatting between yourselves, and I'll read between chapters. So let's find the beginning of this. Oh, yeah, anyway, so as I was mentioning before, it was these two, like Robin Hood and King Arthur, were very much word of mouth stories that were exchanged and expanded upon and stuff like that. And so I don't know if Howard Pyle was the original one who decided to write these down. Just, kind of to keep the legend alive and to have like a base one that people could expand upon, I guess. And then, so he is one of the most well-known ones, but the other most well-known one, I think his name is Green, and I don't remember his first name. It's like a 3-part name, and he did the Adventures of Robin Hood and the Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. But those were done in, I think, the 40s, so obviously I wouldn't be able to do those. Ooh. Nice. I'll have to... Let's see, can I? Nah. I'll have to check that out later. Okay, have a good lurk. And... there we go. Our lurking kitty. So let's go ahead and get started, and we are starting with the prologue, giving an account of Robin Hood and his adventure with the king's foresters, also telling how his band gathered around him, and of the merry adventure that gained him his good right-hand man, the famous Little John. The prologue, how Robin Hood came to be an outlaw. In merry England in the time of old, when good King Henry II ruled the land, there lived within the green glades of Sherwood Forest near Nottingham town a famous outlaw whose name was Robin Hood. No archer ever lived that could speed a grey goose shaft with such skill and cunning as his, nor were there ever such yeomen as the 70 merry men that roamed with him through the greenwood shades. Right merrily they dwelled within the depths of the Sherwood Forest, suffering neither care nor want, but passing the time in merry games of archery or bouts of cudgel play, living with the king's venison, washed down with draughts of ale and of October brewing. Not only Robin himself, but all the band were outlaws and dwelled apart from other men, yet they were beloved by the country people round about, for no one ever came to jolly Robin for help in time of need, and went away again with an empty fist. Sorry, pages stuck together. And now I will tell how it first came about that Robin Hood fell afoul of the law. When Robin was a youth of 18, stout of sinew and bold of heart, the Sheriff of Nottingham proclaimed a shooting match, and offered a prize of a butt of ale to whosoever should shoot the shaft best in Nottinghamshire. I think what they mean by butt of ale is like they take a pig's, like, I guess, carcass or something like that, and so, like, a butt would be the big size of the hindquarters of the pig filled with the ale. At least that's what I come to understand from, I don't remember where I heard this, I could be wrong. Let's see. Now, quoth Robin, will I go too? For fain would I draw a string for the bright eyes of my lass and a butt of good October brewing. So up he got and took his good stout yew bow and a score or more of broad cloth-yard arrows, and started off from Locksley town through Sherwood Forest to Nottingham. It was at the dawn of day, in the merry Maytime, when hedgerows are green and flowers bedeck the meadows, daisies pied and yellow cuckoo buds, and fair primroses all along the briery hedges, when apple buds blossom and sweet birds sing, the lark at dawn of day, and throstle cock and cuckoo, when lads and lasses look upon each other with sweet thoughts, when busy housewives spread their linen to bleach upon the bright green grass, Sweet was the greenwood as they walked along its path, and bright the green and rustling leaves, amid which the little birds sing with might and main. And blithely Robin whistled as he trudged along, thinking of Maid Marian and her bright eyes. For at such time a youth's thoughts are wont to turn pleasantly upon the lass that he loves the best. As thus he walked along with a brisk step and a merry whistle, he came suddenly upon some foresters seated beneath a great oak tree. 15 there were in all, making themselves merry with feasting and drinking, as they sat around a huge pasty, to which each man helped himself, thrusting his hands into the pie, and washing down that which they ate with great horns of ale, which they drew all foaming from a barrel that stood nigh. Each man was clad in Lincoln green, and a fine show they made seated upon the sward beneath that fair spreading tree. Then one of them, with his mouth full, called out to Robin, "Hullo! Where goest thou, little lad, with thy 1-penny bow and thy farthing shafts?" Then Robin grew angry, for no stripling likes to be taunted with his green years. "Now," quoth he, "my bow and eke mine arrows. Now, my bow and eke mine arrows are as good as thine, and moreover I go to the shooting match at Nottingham town, which same has been proclaimed by our good Sheriff of Nottingham. There I will shoot with the other stout yeoman, for a prize has been offered of a fine butt of ale." Then one who held a horn of ale in his hand said, "Huh! Listen to the lad! Why, boy, thy mother's milk is yet scarce and dry upon thy lips, and yet thou pratest of standing up with good stout men in Nottingham butts, but who art scarce able to draw one string of a 2-stone bow." "I'll hold the best of you 20 marks," quoth bold Robin, "that I hit the clout at 80 rods, by the good help of Our Lady fair." At this all laughed aloud, and one said, "Well boasted, thou fair infant, well boasted. And well thou know'st that no target is nigh to make good thy wager." And another cried, "He will be taking ale with his milk next." At this Robin grew right mad. "Hark ye," he said, "yonder at the glade's end I see a herd of deer, ever more than 80 rods distance. I'll hold you 20 marks that, by leave of Our Lady, I caused the best heart among them to die." "Now done," cried he who had spoken first, "and here are 20 marks. I wager that thou causest no beast to die, with or without the maid of Our Lady." Then Robin took his good yew bow in hand, and placed the tip at his instep. He strung it right deftly. Then he knocked a broad cloth-yard arrow, and, raising the bow, drew the gray goose feather to his ear. The next moment the bowstring rang, and the arrow sped down the glade as a sparrowhawk skims in a northern wind. High leaped the noblest heart of all the herd, only to fall dead, reddening the green path with his heart's blood. "Ha!" cried Robin. "How likest thou that shot, good fellows? I wot the wager were mine, and it were 300 pounds. Then all the foresters were filled with rage, and he who had spoken the first and had lost the wager was more angry than all. "Nay," cried he, "the wager is none of thine, and get thee gone straightway, or by all the saints in heaven I'll baste thy sides until thou wilt ne'er be able to walk again." "Knowst thou not," said another, "that thou hast killed the king's deer? And by the laws of our gracious Lord and sovereign King Harry, thine ears should be shaven close to thy head." "Catch him!" cried a third. "Nay," said the fourth, let him e'en go because of his tender years." Never a word said Robin, but he looked at the foresters with a grim face, then, turning on his heel, strode away with them down the forest glade. But his heart was bitterly angry, for his blood was hot and youthful and prone to boil. Now, well would it have been for him who had first spoken had he let let Robin Hood alone, but his anger was hot, both because the youth had gotten the better of him and because of the deep draughts of ale that he had been quaffing. So, of a sudden, without any warning, he sprang to his feet and seized upon his bow and fitted it to a shaft. "Aye," cried he, "and I'll hurry thee anon," and he sent the arrow whistling after Robin. It was well for Robin Hood that that same forester's head was spinning with ale, for else he would never have taken another step. As it was, the arrow whistled within 3 inches of his head. Then he turned round and quickly drew his own bow and sent an arrow back in return. "Ye said I was no archer," cried he aloud, but say so now again." The shaft flew straight. The archer fell forward with a cry and lay on his face upon the ground, his arrows rattling about him from out of his quiver. The grey goose shafts wet with his heart's blood. Then, before the others could gather their wits about them, Robin Hood was gone into the depths of the green wood. Some started after him, but not with much heart, for each feared to suffer the death of his fellow. So presently they all came and lifted the dead man up and bore him away to Nottingham town. Meanwhile, Robin Hood through the greenwood. Gone was all the joy and brightness from everything, for his heart was sick within him, and it was borne in upon his soul that he had slain a man. "Alas," he cried, "thou hast found me an archer that will make thy wife to ring. I would that thou hadst ne'er said one word to me, or that I had never passed thy way, or e'en that my right forefinger had been stricken off, ere that this had happened. In haste I smote, but grieve I sore at leisure." And then, even in his trouble, he remembered the old saw that what is done, and the egg cracked cannot be cured. Whereas Shakespeare says, I think it's, what is done and cannot be undone. And so he came to dwell in the green wood that was to be his home for many a year to come, never again to see the happy days with the lads and lasses of sweet Locksley town. For he was outlawed, not only because he had killed a man, but also because he had poached upon the king's deer, and 200 pounds were set upon his head as a reward for whoever would bring him to court of the king. Now the sheriff of Nottingham swore that he himself would bring this knave Robin Hood to justice, and for 2 reasons. First, because he wanted the 200 pounds, and next, because the forester that Robin Hood had killed was of kin to him. But Robin Hood lay hidden in Sherwood Forest for 1 year, and in that time there gathered around him many others like himself, cast out from other folk for this cause and for that. Some had shot deer in hungry winter time when they could get no other food, and had been seen in the act of the foresters, but had escaped, thus saving their ears. Some had been turned out of their inheritance, that their farms might be added to the king's lands in Sherwood Forest. Oh, hey, Buffiki. Okay, thanks. Enjoy your lurk and good luck with class. Let's see. Some had been despoiled by a great baron or a rich abbot or a powerful esquire. All, for one cause or another, had come to Sherwood to escape wrong and oppression. So, in all that year, 50 or more good stout yeomen gathered about Robin Hood and chose him to be their leader and chief. Then they vowed that even as they themselves had been despoiled, they would despoil their oppressors, whether baron, abbot, knight, or squire, and that from each they would take that which had been wrung from the poor by unjust taxes, or land rents, or in wrongful fines. But to the poor folk they would give a helping hand in need and trouble, and would return to them that which had been unjustly taken from them. Besides this, they swore never to harm a child, nor to wrong a woman, be she wife, maid, or widow, so that after a while, when the people began to find that no harm was meant to them, but that money or food came in time of want to many a poor family, they came to praise Robin and his merry men, and to tell many tales of him and of his doings in Sherwood Forest, for they felt him to be one of themselves. Up rose Robin Hood one merry morning, when all the birds were singing blithely among the leaves, and up rose all his merry men, each fellow washing his head and hands in the cold brown brook that leaped laughing from stone to stone. Then said Robin, "For 14 days we have seen no sports, and now I will go abroad to seek adventures forthwith. But tarry ye, my merry men all, here in the greenwood. Only see that ye mind well my call. 3 blasts upon the bugle horn I will blow in my hour of need. Then come quickly, for I shall want your aid." So saying, he strode away through the leafy forest glades until he had come to the verge of Sherwood. There he wandered for a long time, through highway and byway, through dingy dell and forest skirts. Now he met a fair buxom lass in a shady lane, and each gave the other a merry word and passed their way. Now he saw a fair lady upon an ambling pad, to which he doffed his cap, and who bowed sedately and returned to the fair youth. Now he saw a fat monk on a pannier-laden ass. Now a gallant knight, with spear and shield and armor that flashed brightly in the sunlight. Now a page clad in crimson, and now a stout burgher from North Nottinghamshire, or is that burgher? I'm not really sure, pacing along with serious footsteps. All these sights he saw, but adventure found he not. At last he took a road by the forest skirts, a bypath that dipped towards a broad, pebbly stream, spanned by a narrow bridge made of a log of wood. As he drew nigh this bridge, he saw a tall stranger coming from the other side. Thereupon Robin quickened his pace, as did the stranger likewise, each thinking to cross first. "Now stand thou back," quoth Robin, "and let the better man cross first." "Nay," answered the stranger, "and stand back shine own self, for the better man I wot am I." "That we will presently see," quoth Robin, "and meanwhile stand thou where thou art, or else, by the bright bow of Saint Elfrida, I will show thee right good Nottingham play, with a cloth-yard shaft betwixt thy ribs." "Now," quoth the stranger, "I will tan thy hide till it be as many colours as a beggar's cloak, if thou darest so much as touch a string that same bow that thou holdest in thy hands." "Thou pratest like an ass," said Robin, "for I could send this shaft clean through thy proud heart before a curtal friar could say grace over a roast goose at Michaelmastide." "Thou pratest like a coward," answered the stranger, "for thou standest there with a good yew bow to shoot at my heart, while I have not in my hand but a plain black thorn staff, whereupon to meet thee." "Now," said Robin, "by the faith of my heart, never have I a coward's name in all my life before. I will lay by my trusty bow and eke my arrows, and if thou darest to bide my coming, I will go and cut a cudgel to test thy manhood withal." "I'm marry, that will I abide thy coming, and joyously too," quoth the stranger, whereupon he leaned sturdily upon his staff and to await Robin. Then Robin Hood stepped quickly to the cover side and cut a good staff of ground oak, straight, without flaw, and 6 feet in length, and came back trimming away the tender stems from it, while the stranger awaited him, leaning upon his staff and whistling as he gazed round about. Robin observed him furtively as he trimmed his staff, measuring him from top to toe from out of the corner of his eye, and thought that he had never seen a lustier or a stouter man. Tall was Robin, but taller was the stranger by a head and a neck, for he was 7 feet in height. Broad was Robin across the shoulders, but broader was the stranger by twice the breadth of a palm, while he measured at least an ell around the waist. "Nevertheless," said Robin to himself, "I will baste thy hide right merrily, my good fellow." Then aloud, "Lo, here's my good staff, lusty and tough. Now wait my coming, as thou darest, and meet me as thou fearest not. Then we will fight until one of or the other of us tremble into the stream by dint of blows." "Marry, that meeteth my whole heart," cried the stranger, twirling his staff above his head, betwixt his finger and thumb, until it whistled again. Never did the knights of Arthur's Round Table meet in a stouter fight than did these two. In a moment Robin stepped quickly upon the bridge where the stranger stood. First he made a feint, and then delivered a blow at the stranger's head that, had it met its mark, would have tumbled him speedily into the water. But the stranger turned the blow right deftly, and in return gave one as stout, which Robin also turned as the stranger had done. So they stood, each in his place, neither moving a finger's breadth back for 1 good hour, and many blows were given and received by each in that time, till here and there were sore bones and bumps, yet neither thought of crying "enough," or seemed likely to fall from off the bridge. Now and then they stopped to rest, and each thought that he never had seen in all his life before such a hand at quarterstaff. At last Robin gave the stranger a blow upon the ribs that made his jacket smoke like a damp straw thatch in the sun. So shrewd was the stroke that the stranger came within a hair's breadth of falling off the bridge, but he regained himself and right quickly, and, by a dexterous blow, gave Robin a crack on the crown that caused the blood to flow. Then Robin grew mad with anger and smote with all his might at the other, but the stranger warded the blow and once again thwacked Robin, and this time so fairly that he fell heels over head into the water, as the queen pin falls in a game of bowls. "And where art thou now, my good lad?" shouted the stranger, roaring with laughter. "Oh, in the flood and floating down with the tide," cried Robin, nor could he forbear laughing himself in his sorry plight. Then, gaining his feet, he waded to the bank, the little fish speeding hither and thither, all frightened at his splashing. "Give me thy hands," cried he, and when he had reached the bank, "I must needs own thou art a brave and a sturdy soul, and withal good stout stroke with the cudgels. By this and by that, my head hummeth like to a hive of bees on hot June day." Then he clapped his horn to his lips and winded a blast that went echoing sweetly down the forest paths. "Hey, Mary," quoth he again, "thou art a tall lad, and eke a brave one. For ne'er, I bow, is there a man betwixt here and Canterbury town could do the like of me that thou hast done." "And thou," quoth the stranger, laughing, "takest thy cudgelling like a brave heart and a stout yeoman." But now the distant twigs and branches rustled with the coming of men, and suddenly a score or two of good stout yeomen, all clad in Lincoln green, burst from all the covert, with merry Will Stutely. That's interesting. With merry Will Stutely as their head. "Good master," cried Will, "how's this? Surely thou art all wet from head to foot, and that to the very skin." "Why, Mary," answered jolly Robin, "yon stout fellow hath tumbled me neck and crop into the water, and hath given me a drubbing besides." "And shall we not go without a ducking and eking a drubbing himself?" cried Will Stutely. "I have at him, lads." Then Will and the score of yeomen leaped upon the stranger, but though they sprang quickly, they found him ready and felt him strike right and left with his stout staff, so that, though he went down with press of numbers, some of them rubbed cracked crowns before he was overcome. "Nay, forbear," said Robin, laughing until his sore sides ached again. "He's a right good man and true, and no harm shall befall him. Now hark ye, good youth, wilt thou stay with me and be one of my band? 3 suits of Lincoln green shalt thou have each year, besides 40 marks in fee, and share with us whatsoever good find good shall befall us. Thou shalt eat sweet venison and quaff the stoutest ale, and mine own good right-hand man shalt thou be, for never did I see such a cudgel player in all my life before. Speak, wilt thou be one of my good merry men? That know I not, quoth the stranger surlily, for he was angry at being so tumbled about. If ye handle ye bow and apple shaft no better than ye do oaken cudgel, I wot ye are not fit to be called yeomen in my country. But if there be any man here that can shoot a better shaft than I, then wilt I bethink me of joining with you. Now, by my faith, said Robin, thou art a right saucy varlet, sirrah. Yet I will stoop to thee as I never stooped to man before. Good Stutely, cut thou a fair white piece of bark 4 fingers in breadth, and set it fourscore yards distant on yonder oak. Now, stranger, hit that fairly with a good grey goose shaft, and call thyself an archer. Ay, marry, that I will, answered he. Give me a good stout bow and a fair broad arrow, and if I hit it not, strip me and beat me blue with bowstrings. Then he chose the stoutest bow among them all, next to Robin's own, and a straight grey goose shaft, well feathered and smooth, and stepped to the mark, while all the band, sitting or lying upon the greensward, watched to see him shoot. He drew the arrow to his cheek and loosed the shaft right deftly, sending it so straight down the path that it clove the mark in the very center. "Ha!" cried he. "Mend thou that if thou canst." While even the yeomen clapped their hands at so fair a shot. "That is a keen shot indeed," quoth Robin. "Mend it I cannot, but mar it I may, perhaps." Then, taking up his own good stout bow and nocking an arrow with care, he shot with his very greatest skill. Straight flew the arrow, and so true that it hit fairly upon the stranger's shaft and split it into splinters. Then all the yeomen leaped to their feet and shouted for joy that their master had shot so well. "Now, by the lusty yew bow of good St. Withold," cried the stranger, "that is a shot indeed. Never saw I the like of any on all my life before. Now truly will I be thy man henceforth, and for I. Good Adam Bell, I was a fair shot, but never shot he so." Oh, good Adam Bell was a fair shot, but never shot he so. "Then have I gained a right good man this day," quoth jolly Robin. "What name goest thou by, good fellow?" "Men call me Little John whence I came," answered the stranger. Then Will Stutely, who loved a good jest, spoke up. Nay, fair little stranger," said he, "I like not thy name, and fain would I have it otherwise. Little art thou indeed, and small of bone and sinew, therefore shalt thou be christened Little John, and I will be thy godfather." When Robin Hood and all his band laughed aloud until the stranger began to grow angry. "Thou makest a jest of me," quoth he to Will Stutely. "Thou wilt have sore bones and little pay, and that in short season." "Nay, good friend," said Robin Hood, "bottle thine anger, for the name fitteth thee well. Little John shalt thou be called henceforth, and Little John shall it be. So, come, my merry men, we will prepare a christening feast for this fair infant." So, turning their backs upon the stream, they plunged into the forest once more, through which they traced their steps till they reached the spot where they dwelled in the depths of the woodland. There had they built huts of bark and branches of trees, and made couches of sweet rushes spread over with skins of fallow deer. Here stood a great oak tree with branches spreading broadly around, beneath which was a seat of green moss, where Robin Hood was wont to sit at feast and at merrymaking with his stout men about him. Here they found the rest of the band, some of whom had come in with a brace of fat does. Then they all built great fires, and after a time roasted the doughs and broached a barrel of humming ale. Then, when the feast was ready, they all sat down, but Robin placed Little John at his right hand, for he was henceforth to be the second in the band. Then, when the feast was done, Will Stutely spoke up. "It is now time, I ween, to christen thy bonny babe. Is it not so, merry boys?" And "Aye, aye!" cried all, laughing till the woods echoed with their mirth. "Then 7 sponsors shall we have," quoth Will Stutely, and hunting among all the band, he chose the 7 stoutest men of all of them. "Now, by St. Dunstan," cried Little John, springing to his feet, "more than one of you shall rue it an you lay a finger upon me." But without a word they all ran upon him at once, seizing him by his legs and arms and holding him tightly in spite of his struggles, and they bore him forth while all stood round to see the sport. Then one came forward who had been chosen to play the priest because he had a bald crown, and in his hand he carried a brimming pot of ale. "Now, who bringeth this babe?" he said right soberly. "That do I," answered Will Stutely. "And what name callest thou him?" "Little John call I him." "Now, Little John," quoth the mock priest, "thou hast not lived henceforth, but only got thee along through the world, but henceforth thou wilt live indeed, and thou livedst not, thou wast called John Little, but now that thou dost live indeed, Little John shall thou be called, so christen I thee." And at these last words he emptied the pot of ale upon Little John's head. Then all shouted with laughter as they saw the good brown ale streaming over Little John's beard and trickle from his nose and chin, while his eyes blinked with the smart of it. At first he was of a mind to be angry, but found he could not, because the others were so merry. So he, too, laughed with the rest. Then Robin took this sweet, pretty babe, clothed him all anew from top to toe in Lincoln green, and gave him a good stout bow, and so made him a member of the merry band. And thus it was that Robin Hood became outlawed. Thus a band of merry companions gathered about him, and thus he gained his right-hand man, Little John. And so the prologue ends. And now I will tell how the Sheriff of Nottingham 3 times sought to take Robin Hood, and how he failed each time. Oh, sorry about that. Part first, telling how the Sheriff of Nottingham swore that he would deal dole to Robin Hood. Also, how he made 3 trials thereat, but missed each time by a good bow's length. 1. Robin Hood and the Tinker. Now it was told before how 200 pounds were set upon Robin Hood's head, and how the Sheriff of Nottingham swore that he himself would seize Robin, both because he would fain have the 200 pounds, and because the slain man was the kinsman of his own. Now the sheriff did not yet know what a force Robin had about him in Sherwood, but thought that he might serve a warrant for his arrest, as he could upon any other man that had broken the laws. Therefore he offered 80 golden apples to anyone who would serve his warrant. Oh, golden angels, not apples. But men of Nottingham town knew more of Robin Hood and his doings than the sheriff did, and many laughed to think of serving a warrant upon the bold outlaw, knowing well that all they would get for such service would be cracked crowns, so that no one came forward to take the matter in hand. Thus a fortnight passed, in which time none came forward to do the sheriff's business. Then said he, "A right good reward have I offered to whosoever would serve my warrant upon Robin Hood, and I marvel that no one has come to understand the task." Then one of his men, who was near him, said, Good master, thou wottest not the force that Robin Hood has about him, and how little he cares for warrant of king or sheriff. Truly no one likes to go on the service for fear of cracked crowns and broken bones. Then I hold all Nottingham men to be cowards, said the sheriff, and let me see the man in all of Nottinghamshire that dares disobey the warrant of our sovereign lord King Harry, for by the shire, that's shrine, for by the shrine of St. Edmund I will hang him 40 cubits high. But if no man in Nottingham dare win 80 angels, I will send elsewhere, for there should be men of mettle somewhere in this land. Then he called up a messenger in whom he placed great trust, and bade him saddle his horse, and made ready to go to Lincoln town to see whether he could find anyone there that would do his bidding and win the reward. So that same morning the messenger started forth upon his errand. Bright shone the sun upon the dusty highway that led from Nottingham to Lincoln, stretching away all white over hill and dale. Dusty was the highway and dusty the throat of the messenger, so that his heart was glad when he saw before him the sign of the Blue Boar Inn, when somewhat more than half his journey was done. The inn looked fair to his eye. In the shade of the oak trees that stood around it seemed cool and pleasant, so he alighted from his horse to rest himself for a time, calling for a pot of ale to refresh his thirsty throat. There he saw a party of right jovial fellows seated beneath the spreading oak that shaded the greensward in front of the door. There was a tinker, 2 barefoot friars, and a party of 6 of the king's foresters, all clad in Lincoln green, and all of them were quaffing, humming ale, and singing merry ballads of the good old times. Loud laughing the foresters, as jests were bandied about between the singing, and louder laughed the friars, for they were lusty men with beards that curled like the wool of black rams. But loudest of all laughed the tinker, and he sang more sweetly than any of the rest. His bag and his hammer hung about a twig of the oak tree, and nearby leaned his good stout cudgel, as thick as his wrist and knotted at the end. "Come," cried one of the foresters to the tired messenger, "come join us for this shot. Oh, landlord, bring a fresh pot of ale for each man." The messenger was glad enough to sit down among the others, who they were. The messenger was glad enough to sit down along with the others who were there, for his limbs were weary and the ale was good. "Now, what news bringest thou so fast?" quoth one, "and whither ridest thou today?" The messenger was a chatty soul and loved a bit of gossip dearly. Besides, the pot of ale warmed his heart, so that settling himself in an easy corner of the inn bench, while the host leaned upon the doorway and the hostess stood with her hands beneath her apron, he unfolded his budget of news with great comfort. He told all from the very first, how Robin Hood had slain the forester, and how he had hidden in the greenwood to escape the law, how that he lived therein, all against the law. "Oh, hey, Alpha, good to see you." I'll chat a little between chapters. "All against the law, God wot, slaying his majesty's deer and levying toll on fat abbot, knight, and esquire, so that none dare travel even on broad Watling road, or the Fosse way, for fear of him. How that the sheriff had a mind to serve the king's warrant upon his same rogue, though little would he mind warrant of either king or sheriff, for he was far from being a law-abiding man. Then he told how none could be found in all of Nottingham town to serve his warrant, for fear of cracked pates and broken bones, and how that he, the messenger, was now upon his way to Lincoln town to find of what metal the Lincoln men might be, and whether there were any there that dared serve his same warrant. Wherefore was he now sitting amongst the prettiest lads he had ever known, and the ale was the best ale he had tasted in all his life. To this discourse they listened with open mouths and eyes, for it was a fair piece of gossip to them. Then, when the messenger had done, the jolly tinker broke silence. "Now come I, forsooth, from good Banbury town," said the jolly tinker, "and no one nigh Nottingham, nor Sherwood either, and that be the mark, can hold cudgel with my grip. Why, lads, did I not meet that mad wag Simon of Ely, even at the famous fair at Hertford town, and beat him in the ring at that place before Sir Robert of Leslie and his lady? The same Robin Hood, of whom I wot I never heard before, is a right merry blade, but gin he be strong, am I not stronger? And gin he be sly, am I not slyer? Now, by the bright eyes of Nano the Mill, and by mine own name, and that's Wat of the Crabstaff, and by mine own mother's son, and that's myself, will I, even I, Wat of the Crabstaff, meet this same sturdy rogue, and gin he mind not the seal of our glorious sovereign King Harry, and the warrant to the good sheriff of Nottinghamshire. I will so bruise, beat, and bemaul his pate, that he shall never move finger or toe again. Hear ye that, bully boys? Come, let us have another bout." "How art thou the man for my farthing?" cried the messenger. "And back thou goest with me to Nottingham town." "Nay," quoth the tinker, shaking his head slowly from side to side. "Go I with no man, gin to be naught with mine own free will." "Nay, nay," said the messenger, "no man is there in Nottinghamshire could make thee go against thy will, thou brave fellow." "Ay, that be I brave," said the tinker. "Ay, marry," said the messenger, "thou art a brave lad, but our good sheriff hath offered 80 angels of bright gold to whosoever shall serve the warrant upon Robin Hood, though little good will it do." "Then I will go with thee, lad. Do but wait till I get my bag and hammer and my cudgel. Ay, let me but meet this same Robin Hood, and let me see whether he will not mind the king's warrant." So, after having paid their score, the messenger, with the tinker striding beside his nag, started back to Nottingham again. One bright morning soon after this time, Robin Hood started off to Nottingham town to find what was a-doing there, walking merrily along the roadside where the grass was sweet with daisies, his eyes wandering and his thoughts also. His bugle horn hung at his hip, and his bow and arrows at his back, while in his hand he bore a good stout oaken staff which he twirled with his fingers as he strolled along. And thus he walked down a shady lane. He saw a tinker coming, trolling a merry song as he drew near. On his back hung his bag and his hammer, and in his hand he carried a right stout crabstaff full 6 feet long, and thus sang he: "On peascod time, when hound to horn gives ear till buck be killed, and little lads with pipes of corn sit keeping beasts of field." "Hello, good friend," cried Robin. "I went to gather strawberries." "Hallo," cried Robin again, "by woods and groves full fair." "Hallo, art thou deaf, man?" "Good friend, say I." "And who art thou dost so boldly check a fair song?" quoth the tinker, stopping in his singing. "Hallo, thine own self, whether thou be good friend or no. Let me tell thee, thou stout fellow, gin thou be a good friend, it were well for us both. But gin thou be no good friend, it were ill for thee." "Then let us be good friends," quoth jolly Robin. "For ill would it be to be ill, and ill like I thine own staff full well to make it but well. So good friends let us be." "Ay, marry, then let us be," said the tinker. "But, good youth, thy tongue runneth so nimbly that my poor and heavy wits can but ill follow it. So talk more plainly, I pray, for I am a plain man forsooth. And whence comest thou, my lusty blade? Quoth Robin. I come from Banbury, answered the tinker. Alas, quoth Robin, I hear there is sad news this merry morn. Ha! Is it indeed so? Cried the tinker eagerly. Prithee, tell it speedily, for I am a tinker by trade, as thou seest, and as I am in my trade, I am greedy for news, even as a priest so greedy for farthings. Well then, quoth Robin, list thou, and I will tell, but bear thyself up bravely, for the news is sad, I wot. Thus it is. I hear that 2 tinkers are in the stocks for drinking ale and beer. Now a murrain seize thee and thy news, thou scurvy dog, quoth the tinker. Thou speakest but ill of good men, but sad news it is indeed, and there be 2 stout fellows in the stocks. Nay, said Robin, thou hast missed the mark, and dost but weep for the wrong sow. The sadness of the news lieth in that there be but 2 in the stocks, for the others do roam the country at large. Now by the pewter platter of St. Dunstan, cried the tinker, I have a good part of a mind to baste thy hide for thine ill jest. But gin men be put in the stocks for drinking ale and beer, and I trow you wouldst not lose thy part. Loud laughed Robin, and cried, Now well taken, tinker, well taken. Why, thy wits are like beer, so do froth up most when they grow sour. But right art thou, man, for I love ale and beer right well. Therefore, come straightway with me hard by to the sign of the Blue Boar, and if thou drinkst as thou appearest, and I wot thou wilt not belie thy looks, I will drench thy throat with as good home brewed as ever was tapped in all broad Nottinghamshire. Now, by my faith, said the tinker, thou art a right good fellow in spite of thy scurvy jests. I love thee, my sweet chuck, and did I not go not with thee to that same Blue Boar, thou mayst call me a heathen. Tell me thy news, good friend, I pray thee, quoth Robin, as they trudged along together, for tinkers, I ween, are all as full of news as an egg of meat. Now I love thee as my brother, my bully blade, said the tinker, else I would not tell thee my news, for sly am I, man, and I have in hand a grave undertaking that doth call for all my wits, for I come to seek a bold outlaw that men hereabouts call Robin Hood. Within my pouch I have a warrant, all fairly written out in parchment forsooth, with a great red seal for to make it lawful. Could I but meet this same Robin Hood, I would serve it upon his dainty body, and if he minded it not, I would beat him till every one of his ribs would cry amen. But thou livest there hereabouts. Sorry. But thou livest hereabouts, mayst thou knowest Robin Hood thyself, good fellow? Ha! I marry I do, somewhat, quoth Robin, and I have seen him this very morn. The tinker, men say that he is but a sad, sly thief. Thou hadst better watch thy warrant, man, or else he may steal it out of thy pouch. Ha! Let him but try, cried the tinker. Sly may he be, but sly am I, too. I would I had him here now, man to man. And he made his heavy cudgel to spin again. But what manner of man is he, lad? Not much like myself, said Robin, laughing, and in height and build and age nigh the same, and he hath blue eyes too like mine. Nay, quoth the tinker, thou art but a green youth. I thought him to be a great bearded man. Nottingham men feared him so. He truly is not so old, nor so stout as thou art, said Robin, but men do call him a right deft hand at quarterstaff. That may be, said the tinker right sturdily, but I am more deft than he is. For did I not overcome Simon of Ely in a fair bout in the ring at Hertford town? But if he knowst him, but if thou knowst him, my jolly blade, wilt thou go with me and bring me to him? 80 bright angels hath the sheriff promised me if I serve the warrant upon the knave's body, and 10 of them will be to, oh goodness, and 10 of them will I give to thee if thou showst me him. Oh, 80. Okay, that makes more sense. Aye, that I will, said Robin. But show me thy warrant, man, till I see whether it be good or no. That will I not do even to my own brother, answered the tinker. No man shall see my warrant till I serve it upon yon fellow's own body. So be it, quoth Robin. And thou show it not to me, I know not to whom thou wilt show it. But here we are at the sign of the Blue Boar. So let us in and taste this brown October. No sweeter inn could be found in all of Nottinghamshire than that of the Blue Boar. None had such lovely trees standing around, or was so covered with trailing clematis and sweet broad woodbine. None had such good beer and such humming ale, nor in winter time, when the north wind howled and snow drifted through the hedges, was there to be found elsewhere such a roaring fire as blazed upon the hearth of the Blue Boar. At such times might be found a goodly company of yeomen or country folk seated around the blazing hearth, bandying merry jests and roasted crabs, meaning crab apples, bobbed in bowls of ale upon the hearthstone. Well known was the inn to Robin Hood and his band, for there had he and such merry companions as Little John or Will Stutely, or young David of Doncaster, often gathered when all the forest was filled with snow. As for mine host, he knew how to keep a still tongue in his head, and to swallow his words before they passed his teeth, for he knew very well which side of his beard was spread with butter, for Robin and his band were the best of customers, and paid their scores without having them chalked up behind the door. So now, when Robin Hood and the tinker came hitherto, and called aloud for 2 great pots of ale, none would have known, from look or speech, that the host had ever set eyes upon the outlaw before. Bide thou there, quoth Robin to the tinker, while I go and see that mine hath draweth ale from the right butt, for he hath good October, I know, and that brewed by Withold of Tamworth. So saying, he went within and whispered to the host to add a measure of Flemish strong waters to the good English ale, which the latter did, and brought it to them. By Our Lady, said the tinker after a long draught of the ale, yon same Withold of Tamworth? Right good Saxon name, too, and I would have thee know. Breweth the most humming ale that e'er passed the lips of Wat of the Crabstaff. Drink, man, drink, cried Robin, only wetting his own lips meanwhile. Oh, landlord, bring my friend another pot of the same, and now for a song, my jolly blade. Aye, that will I give thee a song, my lovely fellow, quoth the tinker, for I never tasted such ale in all my days before. Oh, by Our Lady, it doth make my head hum even now. Hey, dame hostess, come listen, and thou wouldst hear a song, and thou too, thou bonny lass, for never I sing so well as when bright eyes do look upon me the while. Then he sang an ancient ballad of the time of good King Arthur, called The Marriage of Sir Gawain, which you may sometime read yourself in stout English of early times, and as he sang, all listened to that noble tale of noble knight and his sacrifice to his king. But long before the tinker came to the last verse, his tongue began to trip and his head to spin, because of the strong waters mixed with the ale. First his tongue tripped, then it grew thick of sound. Then his head wagged from side to side, till at last he fell asleep, as though he never would waken again. Then Robin Hood laughed aloud and quickly took the warrant from out the tinker's pouch with his deft fingers. "Sly art thou, tinker," quoth he, "but not yet, I trow, art thou as sly as that same sly thief Robin Hood." Then he called the host to him and said, "Here, good man, are 10 broad shillings for the entertainment thou hast given us this day. See that thou takest good care of thy fair guest here, and if he wakes, thou mayst again charge him 10 shillings also, and if he have it not, thou mayst take his bag and hammer, and even his coat in payment. Thus do I punish those that come into the greenwood to deal dole to me. As for thine own self, never knew I a landlord yet that would not charge twice as he could." Oh, sorry, I've never seen that, trying to join live. That's interesting. Let me take a look. Victor reply. I'm not really sure. Hello, Tactical Lean, by the way. I'm not sure if that's something that I need to allow or not. How are you doing, by the way? I'm just taking a little break to greet you. You stubbed your toe trying to join live. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm just in the middle of the first chapter of the first part of Robin Hood, by the way. There we go. At this the host smiled slyly, as though saying to himself, "The rustic saw, teach a magpie to suck eggs." The tinker slept until the afternoon drew to a close, and the shadows grew long beside the woodland edge. Then he woke. First he looked up, then he looked down, then he looked east, and then he looked west, for he was gathering his wits together like barley straws blown apart by the wind. First he thought of his merry companion, but he was gone. Then he thought of his stout crab-staff, and that he had within his hand. Then of his warrant, and of the 80 angels he was to gain for serving it upon Robin Hood. He thrust his hand into his pouch, but not a scrap nor a farthing was there. Then he sprang to his feet in rage. "Ho, landlord!" cried he. "Whither hath that knave gone that was with me but now?" "What knave meaneth your worship?" quoth the landlord, calling the tinker worship to soothe him, as a man would pour oil upon angry water. "I saw no knave with your worship, for I swear no man would dare call that man knave so nigh to Sherwood Forest. Right stout yeoman I saw with your worship, but I thought that your worship knew him, for few there be about here that pass him by and know him not." "Now how should I, that ne'er hath squealed in your sty, know well the swine therein? Who was he then, and thou know'st him so well?" "Yon same is a right stout fellow, who men thereabout do call Robin Hood, which same—" "No, by lady!" cried the tinker hastily, in a deep voice like an angry bull. "Thou didst see me come into thine inn, I, and a staunch honest craftsman, and never told me who my company was. Well, knowing thine own self who he was, now I have a right sound piece of mind to crack thy knave pate for thee. Then he took up his cudgel and looked at the landlord as though he would smite him there where he stood. "Nay," cried the host, throwing up his elbow, for he feared the blow. "How knew I that thou knewest him not?" "Well and truly thankful mayst thou be," quoth the tinker, "that I be a patient man, and so do spare thy bald crown, else wouldst thou ne'er cheat customer again. But as for the same knave Robin Hood, I go straightway to seek him, and if I do not score his knave's pate, cut my staff into kindling, and call me a woman." So saying, he gathered himself together to depart. "Oh, hello! How are you doing? Was that you, Ren? Or Aaron?" I am a Storytime Sunny. You can tell, of course. I do mainly Storytime streams. I do some game streams. I've been getting back into RuneScape lately, and here are my socials. Oops, sorry. And I put all of my story times up on YouTube so that people can go back and refer to them. Or, like watch them at their leisure. They are all in playlist form, so you don't have to go searching for the next one. And we're about halfway through this story time. And also, just a little introduction to my cats, because cats... They're in this little picture right over here. Stockings and Maestro. And feel free to write in chat. I will reply at chapter breaks, which actually, we're getting really close to that. So I'll continue for a little bit. Let's see. Nay, quoth the landlord, standing in front of him and holding out his arms like a gooseherd driving his flock, for money made him bold. Thou goest not till thou hast paid me my score. But did not he pay thee? Not so much as 1 farthing and 10 good shillings worth of ale have ye drunk this day. Nay, I say thou goest not away without paying me, else shall our good sheriff know of it. Not have I paid thee with, not have I to pay thee with, good fellow, quoth the tinker. Good fellow, not me, said the landlord. Good fellow am I not when it comes to lose 10 shillings. Pay me that thou owest me in broad money, or else leave thy coat and bag and hammer. Yet I wot they are not worth 10 shillings, and I shall lose thereby. Nay, and thou stirrest, I have a great dog within, and I will loose him upon thee. Make and open that thy door, and let forth Brian if this fellow stirs 1 step. Nay, quoth the tinker, for by roaming the country he had learned what dogs were. Take thou what thou wilt have, and let me depart in peace, and may a murrain go with thee. But, O landlord, and I catch yon scurvy varlet, I swear he shall pay full for usury for that he hath had. So saying, he strode away toward the forest, talking to himself, while the landlord and his worthy dame and Macon stood looking after him, and laughed when he was fairly gone. Robin, and I stripped yon ass of his pack main neatly, quoth the landlord. Now it happened about this time that Robin Hood was going through the forest to Fosse Way, to see what was to be seen there, for the moon was full and the night gave promise of being bright. In his hand he carried his stout oaken staff, and at his side hung his bugle horn. As thus he walked up a forest path, whistling down upon another path came the tinker, muttering to himself and shaking his head like an angry bull. And so, at a sudden bend, they met sharply face to face. Each stood still for a time, and then Robin spoke. "Hello, my sweet bird," said he, smiling merrily. "How likest thou thine ale? Wilt not sing to me another song?" The tinker said nothing at first, but stood looking at Robin with a grim face. "Now," quoth he at last, "I am right glad I have met thee. And if I do not rattle thy bones within thy hide this day, I give thee leave to put thy foot upon my neck." "With all my heart," cried merry Robin. "Rattle my bones, and thou canst." So saying, he gripped his staff and threw himself upon his guard. Then the tinker spat upon his hand, and grasping his staff, came straight at the other. He struck 2 or 3 blows, but soon found that he had met his match, for Robin warded and parried all of them, and before the tinker thought, he gave him a rap upon the ribs in return. At this, Robin laughed aloud, and the tinker grew more angry than ever, and smote again with all his might and main. Oh, thank you so much for the bits, Corral. Corgi bits. So cute. Again, Robin warded 2 of the strokes, but at the third his staff broke beneath the mighty blows of the tinker. Now I'll betide thee, traitor staff, cried Robin as it fell from his hands. A foul stick art thou to serve me thus in mine hour of need. Now yield thee, quoth the tinker, for thou art my captive, and if thou do not, I will beat thy pate to a pudding. To this Robin Hood made no answer, but clapping his horn to his lips, he blew 3 blasts loud and clear. Ay, quoth the tinker, blow thou mayest, but go thou must with me to Nottingham town, for the sheriff would fain see thee there. Now wilt thou yield thee, or shall I have to break thy pretty head? And I must drink sour ale, I must, quoth Robin, but never have I yielded me to man before, and thou without wound or mark upon my body. Nor would I bethink me will I yield now. Ho! My merry men, come quickly. Then from out the forest leaped Little John and 6 stout yeomen clad in Lincoln green. How now, good master, cried Little John, what need hast thou that thou dost wind thy horn so loudly? There stands a tinker, quoth Robin, that would fain take me to Nottingham, there to hang upon the gallows tree. Then shall he himself hang forthwith. Cried Little John, and he and the others made at the tinker to seize him. Nay, touch him not, said Robin, for right stout man he is. A metal man he is by trade, and a mettled man by nature. Moreover, he doth sing a lovely ballad. Say, good fellow, wilt thou join my merry men all? 3 suits of Lincoln green shalt thou have a year, besides 40 marks in fee. Thou shalt share all with us, and lead a right merry life in the green wood, for cares have we not, and most misfortune cometh not upon us within the sweet shades of Sherwood, where we shoot the dun deer and feed upon venison and sweet oaten cakes and curds and honey. Wilt thou come with me? Ay, marry, I will join with all of you, said the tinker, for I love a merry life, and I love thee, good master, though thou didst thwack my ribs and cheat me into a bargain. Fain am I to own thou art both a stouter and a slyer man than I, so I will obey thee and be thine own true servant. So all turned their steps to the forest depths, where the tinker was to live henceforth. For many a day he sang ballads to the band, until the famous Allan of Dale joined him. Before those sweet voices all others seemed to harsh as a raven's, but of him we will learn hereafter. All right, so I'm going to take a quick, let's get Maestro back up. Where are you, Maestro? There we are. So I'm going to take a quick break to give the kitty some treats. Many thanks to Corel. So let's go grab them. And Maestro's right here. Hey, pants. Yeah. Treats time. I know you heard me making kissy noises. Come on. Pants. Come here. Maestro. Come here. Maestro. Seriously? Oh, hey, there's Snackings too. Hey, Buckle. Sweet. Snackings. There you are. I didn't even see you here. There. She usually likes to take hers on the desk, so you get a little bit of ASMR from her. Let me move all of my things so she has room. Snackings, come on. Snackings. Hey, genius. It's right here. And there you go, Maestro. These are from Corel. Here you go. Where did the lid go? Now I have to find that. Snockings, don't drink my water. Well, eventually I'll find... Oh, there's the lid. Sorry about that. So the cuties, thank you, Corral. All right. Let us continue. The shooting match at Nottingham Town. Then the sheriff was very worth because of his failure to take Robin Hood. Wroth. Then the sheriff was very wroth because of his failure to take Jolly Robin, for it came to his ears, as ill news always does, that the people laughed at him and made a jest of his thinking to serve a warrant upon such a one as the bold outlaw. And a man hates nothing so much as being made a jest of. So he said, Our gracious lord and sovereign king himself shall know of this, and how his laws are perverted and despised by his band of rebel outlaws. As for yon traitor Tinker, him will I hang if I catch him upon the very highest gallows tree in all Nottinghamshire. Then he bade all his servants and retainers to make ready to go to London town to see and speak with the king. At this there was bustling at the sheriff's castle, and men ran hither and thither upon this business and upon that, while the forge fires of Nottingham glowed red far into the night like twinkling stars, for all the smiths of the town were busy, making or mending armor for the sheriff's troop of escorts. For 2 days this labor lasted. Then, on the 3rd, all was ready for the journey. So forth they started in the bright sunlight from Nottingham town to Fosse Way, and thence to Watling Street. And so they journeyed for 2 days until they saw at last the spires and towers of great London town. And many folks stopped as they journeyed along and gazed at the show they made riding along the highway with their flashing armor and gay plumes and trappings. In London, King Henry and his fair Queen Eleanor held their court, gay with ladies in silk and satins and velvets and cloth of gold, and also brave knights and gallant courtiers. Thither came the sheriff and was shown into the king's presence. A boon, quoth he, and he knelt upon the ground. Now what wouldst thou have? Said the king. Let us hear what may be thy desires. O good my lord and sovereign, spake the sheriff, in Sherwood Forest, in our own good shire of Nottingham, liveth a bold outlaw whose name is Robin Hood. In good sooth, said the king, his doings have reached me, even our royal ears. He is a saucy, rebellious varlet, yet, I am fain to own, a right merry soul withal. But hearken, O my most gracious sovereign, said the sheriff. I sent a warrant to him from thine own royal seat attached, by a right lusty knave, but he beat the messenger and stole the warrant. He killeth thy deer and robbeth thine own liege subjects, even upon the great highways. Why, how now? Quoth the king wrathfully. What wouldst thou have me do? Comest thou not to me with a great array of men-at-arms and retainers, and yet art not able to take a single band of lusty knaves without armor on breast? In thine own country, what wouldst thou have me do? Art thou not my sheriff? Are not my laws in force in Nottinghamshire? Canst thou not take thine own course against those that break the law, or do any injury to thee or thine? Go, get thee gone, and think well. Devise some plan of thine own, but trouble me no further. But look well to it, Master Sheriff, for I will have my law obeyed by all men within my kingdom, and if thou art not able to enforce them, thou art no sheriff for me. So look well to thyself, I say, or ill may befall thee, as well as all the thieving knaves in Nottinghamshire. When the flood cometh, it sweepeth away grain as well as chaff. Then the sheriff turned away with a sore and troubled heart, and sadly he rued his fine show of retainers, for he saw that the king was angry because he had so many men about him, and yet could not enforce the laws. So, as they all rode slowly back to Nottingham, the sheriff was thoughtful and full of care. Not a word did he speak to anyone, and no one of his men spoke to him, but all the time he was busy devising some plan to take Robin Hood. "Ha!" cried he suddenly, smiting his own hand upon his thigh. "I have it now! Ride on, my merry men all, and let us get back to Nottingham town as speedily as we may. And mark well my words, before a fortnight is past, that evil knave Robin Hood will be safely clapped into Nottingham gaol." But what was the sheriff's plan? As a usurer, usurer? I don't know. Usurer. U-S-U-R-E-R. As a usurer takes each one of the bag of silver angels, feeling each coin to find whether it be clipped or not, so the sheriff, as all rode slowly and sadly back towards Nottingham, took up thought after thought in turn, feeling around the edges in each, but finding in every one some flaw. At last he thought of the daring soul of Jolly Robin, and how, as he and the sheriff knew, he often came even within the walls of Nottingham. Now, thought the sheriff, could I but persuade Robin nigh to Nottingham town so that I could find him, I warrant I would lay hands upon him so stoutly that he would never get away again. Then of a sudden it came to him like a flash that, were he to proclaim a great shooting match and offer some grand prize, Robin Hood might be over-persuaded by his spirit to come to the butts, and it was his thought that caused him to cry, "Ha!" and smite his palm upon his thigh. So, as soon as he had returned safely to Nottingham, he sent messengers north and south, and east and west, to proclaim through town, hamlet, and countryside this grand shooting match, and every one was hidden that could draw a longbow, and the prize was to be an arrow of pure beaten gold. When Robin Hood first heard the news of this, he was in Lincoln town, and hastening back to Sherwood Forest, he soon called all his merry men about him and spoke to them. "Now hearken, my merry men all, to the news that I have brought from Lincoln town today. Our friend, the Sheriff of Nottingham, hath proclaimed a shooting match, and hath sent messengers to tell of it through all the countryside, and the prize is to be a bright golden arrow. Now I fain would have one of us win it, both because of the fairness of the prize, and because our sweet friend the sheriff hath offered it. So we will take our bows and shafts, and go there to shoot, for I know right well that merriment will be a-going. What say ye, lads?" The young David of Doncaster spoke up and said, "Now listen, I pray thee, good master, unto what I say. I have come straight from our friend Edom of the Blue Boar, and there I heard the full news of this same match. But, master, I know from him, and he got it from the sheriff's man Ralph of the Scar, that this same knavish sheriff hath but laid a trap for thee in this shooting match, and wishes nothing so much as to see thee there. So go not, ye good master, for I know right well he doth seek to beguile thee, but stay within the greenwood, lest we all meet dole and woe." "Now," quoth Robin, "thou art a wise lad, and keepest thine ears open and thy mouth shut. So becometh a wise and crafty woodsman. But shall we let it be said that the Sheriff of Nottingham did cow bold Robin Hood and 70 of his fair archers, as are in all merry England? Nay, good David, what thou tell'st me maketh me to desire the prize even more than I else should do. But what saith our good worship? But what saith our good gossip Swathhold? Is it not a hasty man burneth his mouth, and the fool that keepeth his eyes shut falleth into the pit? Thus he says, truly therefore, we must meet guile with guile. Now some of you clothe yourselves as curtal friars, and some as rustic peasants, and some as tinkerers, or as beggars. But see that each man taketh a good bow or broadsword, in case need should arise. As for myself, I will shoot for this same golden arrow, and should I win it, we will hang it to the branches of our good greenwood tree for the joy of all the band. How like you the plan, my merry men all? Then good, good, cried all the band right heartily. A fair sight was Nottingham Town on the day of the shooting match. All along upon the green meadow, beneath the town walls, stretched a row of benches, one above the other, which were for knight and lady, squire and dame, and rich burghers and their wives. For none but those of rank and quality were to sit there. At the end of the range, near the target, was a raised seat bedecked with ribbons and scarfs and garlands of flowers for the Sheriff of Nottingham and his dame. The range was 20 paces abroad. At one end stood the target, at the other a tent of striped canvas, from the pole of which fluttered many-colored flags and streamers. In this booth were casks of ale, free to be broached by any of the archers who might wish to quench their thirst. Across the range, from where the seats for the better folk were raised, was a railing to keep the poorer people from crowding in front of the target. Already, while it was early, the benches were beginning to fill with people of quality, who kept constantly arriving in little carts, or upon palfreys that curveted gaily to the merry twinkle of silver bells at bridle reins. With these came also the poorer folk, who sat or lay upon the green grass near the railing that kept them from off the range. In the great tent the archers were gathered by twos and threes, some talking loudly of their fair shots each man had made in his day, some looking well to their bows, drawing a string betwixt the fingers to see that there was no fray upon it, or inspecting arrows, shutting one eye and peering down a shaft to see that it was not warped, but straight and true. For neither bow nor shaft should fail at such a time and for such a prize. And never was such a company of yeomen as were gathered at Nottingham Town that day, for the very best archers of merry England had come to this shooting match. There was Gill of the Red Cap, the sheriff's own head archer, and Dickon Cruikshanks of Lincoln Town, and Adam of the Dell, a man of Tamworth, of 80 years and more, but hale and lusty still, who in his time had shot in the famous of the match at Woodstock, and had there beaten that renowned archer, Climb of the Clough. And many more famous men of the longbow were there, whose names have been handed down to us in goodly ballads of the olden times. But now all the benches were filled with guests, lord and lady, burgher and dame, when at last the sheriff himself came with his lady, he riding with stately mane upon his milk-white horse, and she upon her brown filly. Upon his head he wore a purple velvet cap, and purple hose were of and purple velvet was his robe, all trimmed about with rich ermine. His jerkin and hose were of sea-green silk, and his shoes of black velvet, the pointed toes fastened to his garters with golden chains. A golden chain hung about his neck, and at his collar was a great carbuncle set in red gold. His lady was dressed in blue velvet, all trimmed with swan's down, so they made a gallant sight as they rode along side by side, and all the people shouted from where they crowded across the space from the gentlefolk. So the sheriff and his lady came to their place. where men-at-arms with hauberk and spear stood about waiting for them. Then when the sheriff and his dame had sat down, he bade his herald wind upon his silver horn, who thereupon sounded 3 blasts that came echoing cheerily back from the grey walls of Nottingham. Then the archers stepped forth to their places, while all the folks shouted with a mighty voice, each man calling upon his favourite yeoman. "Red Cap!" cried some. "Crookshanks!" cried the others. "Hey! Hey for William of Leslie!" shouted others yet again, while ladies waved silken scarves to urge each yeoman to do his best. Then the herald stood forth and loudly proclaimed the rules of the game as follows. "Shoot each man from yon mark, which is 70 yards and 10 from the target. 1 arrow shooteth each man first, and from all the archers shall the 10 that shooteth the fairest shafts be chosen to shoot again. 2 arrows showeth each man of these 10, then shall there be then 3 that shoot the fairest shafts be chosen for to shoot again. 3 arrows shooteth each man of those 3, and to him that shooteth the fairest shafts shall the prize be given." Then the sheriff leaned forward, looking keenly among the press and the archers to find whether Robin Hood was among them, but no one was clad in Lincoln green, such as was worn by Robin and his band. "Nevertheless," said the sheriff to himself, "he may still be there, and I miss him among the crowd of other men. But let me see when but 10 men shoot, for I wot he will be among the 10, or I know him not." And now the archers shot, each man in turn, and the good folk never saw such archery as was done that day. 6 arrows were within the clout, 4 within the black, and only 2 smote the outer ring, so that when the last arrow sped and struck the target, all the people shouted aloud, for it was noble shooting. And now but 10 men were left of all those that had shot before, and of those 10, 6 were famous throughout the land, and most of the folk gathered there knew them. These 6 men were Gilbert of the Red Cap, Adam of the Dell, Dickon Crookshank, William of Leslie, Hubert of Cloud, and Swithin Hertford. Swithin. 2 others were yeomen of Mary of Lincolnshire. Another was a tall stranger in blue, who said he came from Lincoln town, and the last was a tattered stranger in scarlet, who wore a patch over one eye. "Now," quoth the sheriff to a man-at-arms who stood near him, "seest thou Robin Hood among those 10? "Nay, that do I not, your worship," answered the man. "6 of them I know right well. Of those Yorkshire yeomen, one is too tall and the other too short for that bold knave. Robin's beard is as yellow as gold, while yon tattered beggar in scarlet hath a beard of brown, besides being blind of one eye. As for the stranger in blue, Robin's shoulders, I ween, are 3 inches broader than this." "Then," quoth the sheriff, smiting his thigh angrily, "yon knave is a coward as well as a rogue, and dares not show his face among good men and true." Then, after they had rested a short time, those 10 stout men stepped forth to shoot again. Each man shot 2 arrows, and as they shot, not a word was spoken. But all the crowd watched with scarce a breath of sound. But when the last had shot his arrow, another great shout arose, while many cast their caps aloft for joy of such marvellous shooting. "Now, by our gracious fair lady," quoth old Sir Amyas of the Dell, who bowed with 80 years and more, sat near the sheriff, "ne'er saw I such archery in all my life before, yet have I seen the best hands at the longbow for 80 years and more." And now but 3 men were left for all those that had shot before. One was Gil of the Red Cap, one the tattered stranger in scarlet, and one Adam of the Dell of Tamworth town. Then all the people called aloud, some crying, "Ho, for Gilbert of the Red Cap!" and some, "Hey, for stout Adam Tamworth!" But not a single man in the crowd called for the stranger in scarlet. "Now shoot thou well, Gilbert," said the sheriff, "and if thine be the best shaft, 50 broad silver pennies will I give to thee besides the prize." "Truly I will do my best," quoth Gilbert right sturdily. "Man cannot do aught but his best, but that will I strive to do this day." So saying, he drew forth a fair, smooth arrow with a broad feather, and fitted it deftly to the string. Then, drawing his bow with care, he sped the shaft. Straight flew the arrow, and hit fairly in the clout, a finger's breadth from the center. "A Gilbert! A Gilbert!" shouted all the crowd. And now, by my faith," cried the sheriff, smiting his hands together, "that is a shrewd shot." Then the tattered stranger stepped forth, and all the people laughed as they saw a yellow patch that showed beneath his arm that he raised his elbow to shoot, and also to see him aim with but one eye. He drew the good yew bow quickly, and quickly loosed a shaft. So short was the time that no man could draw a breath betwixt the drawing and the shooting. Yet his arrow lodged nearer the center than the other by twice the length of a barleycorn. "Now, by all the saints in paradise," cried the sheriff, "that is a lovely shaft in a very truth." Then Adam of the Dell shot carefully and cautiously, and his arrow lodged close beside the stranger's. Then, after a short space, they all three shot again, and once more each arrow lodged within the clout, but this time Adam of the Dell was the farthest from the center, and again the tattered stranger's shot was the best. Then, after another time of rest, they all shot for the third time. This time Gilbert took great heed to his aim, keenly measuring the distance and shooting with shrewdest care. Straight flew the arrow, and all shouted till the very flags that waved in the breeze shook with the sound, and the rooks and the daws flew clamoring about the roofs of the old grey tower, for the shaft had lodged close beside the spot that marked the very center. "Well done, Gilbert!" cried the sheriff right joyfully. "Fain am I to believe the prize is thine, and right fairly won. Now, thou ragged knave, let me see thee shoot a better shaft than that." Not spake the stranger, but took his place, while all was hushed, and no one spoke or even seemed to breathe, so great was the silence, for wonder that what he would do. Meanwhile, also, quite still stood the stranger, holding his bow in his hand, while one could count 5. Then he drew his trusty yew, holding it drawn by but a moment, then loosed the string. Straight flew the arrow, and so true that it smote a grey goose feather from off Gilbert's shaft, which fell fluttering through the sunlit air as the stranger's arrow lodged close beside his of the red cap, and in the very center. No one spoke a word for a while, and no one shouted, but each man looked into his neighbor's face amazedly. "Nay," quoth good Adam of the Dell presently, drawing a long breath and shaking his head as he spoke. "Oh, thank you for the hydrate." "Nay," quoth old Adam of the Dell presently, drawing a long breath and shaking his head as he spoke. 20 years and more have I shot shaft, and maybe not all times bad, but I shoot no more this day, for no man can match with yon stranger, whoe'er he may be." Then he thrust his shaft into his quiver, rattling, and unstrung his bow without another word. Then the sheriff came down from his dais and drew nearer, in all his silks and velvets, to where the tattered stranger stood leaning upon his stout bow, while the good folk crowded around to see the man who shot so wondrously well. "Here, good fellow," quoth the sheriff, "take thou the prize, and well and fairly hast thou won it, I vow. What may be thy name, and whence comest thou?" "Men do call me Jock Tevoitstale, and thence am I come," said the stranger. "Then by Our Lady, Jock, thou hast the fairest archer that e'er mine eyes beheld, and if thou wilt join my service, I will clothe thee with a better cloak than thou hast upon thy back. Thou shalt eat and drink of the best, and at every Christmas tide 80 marks shall be thy wage. I trow thou drawest a better bow than that same coward knave Robin Hood, who dared not show his face here this day. Say, good fellow, wilt thou join my service?" "Nay, that I will not," quoth the stranger. "I will be mine own, and no man in all merry England shall be my master." "Then get thee gone, and the murrain seize thee," cried the sheriff, and his voice trembled with anger. "And by my faith and troth, I have a good part of a mind to have thee beaten for thine insolence." Then he turned upon his heel and strode away. It was a right motley company that gathered about the noble greenwood tree in Sherwood's depths that same day. 80 and more of barefoot friars were there, and some that looked like tinkerers, and some that seemed to be sturdy beggars and rustic hinds. And seated upon a mossy couch was one all clad in tattered scarlet, with a patch over one eye, and in his hand he held the golden arrow that was the prize of the great shooting match. Then, amid a noise of talking and laughter, he took the patch from off his eye, and tripped away the scarlet rags from off his body, and showed himself all clothed in fair Lincoln green, and quoth he, "Oh, easy come these things away, but a walnut stain cometh not so speedily from yellow hair." Then all laughed louder than before, for it was Robin Hood himself that had won the prize from the sheriff's very hands. Then all sat down to the woodland feast, and talked among themselves to the merry jests that had been played upon the sheriff, and of the adventures that had befallen each member of the band in his disguise. But when the feast was done, Robin Hood took Little John apart and said, "Truly am I vexed in my blood, for I heard the sheriff say today, 'Thou shootest better than that coward knave Robin Hood, that dared not show his face here this day.' I would fain let him know who it was who won the golden arrow from out of his hand, and also that I am no coward such as he takes me to be." Then Little John said, "Good master, take thou me and Will Stutely, and I will send yon fat sheriff news of all this by a messenger, such as he doth not expect." That day the sheriff sat at meat in the great hall in his house at Nottingham town. Long tables stood down the hall, at which sat men-at-arms and household servants and good stout villains, or bond-servants, in all 80 and more. There they talked of the day's shootings, and as they ate their meat and quaffed their ale, the sheriff sat at the head of the table upon a raised seat under a canopy, and beside him sat his dame. "By my troth," said he, "I did reckon full roundly that knave Robin Hood would be at the game today. I did not think that he was such a coward, but who could that saucy knave be who answered me to my beard so bravely? I wondered that I did not have him beaten, but there was something about him that spoke of other things than rags and tatters." Then, even as he finished speaking, something fell rattling among the dishes on the table, while those that sat near started up wondering what it might be. After a while, one of the men-at-arms gathered courage enough to pick it up and bring it to the sheriff. Then everyone saw that it was a blunted gray goose-feather shaft, with a fine scroll about the thickness of a goose quill tied near to its head. The sheriff opened the scroll and glanced at it, while the veins upon his forehead swelled and his cheeks grew ruddy with rage as he read, for this was what he saw. Now heaven bless thy grace this day, say all in sweet Sherwood, for thou didst give the prize away to merry Robin Hood. Whence came this? Cried the sheriff in a mighty voice. Even through the window, your worship, quoth the man who had handed the shaft to him. And that brings us to the end of story time for today. We will continue with the Merry Adventures of Robin Hood by Howard Pyle next Tuesday, 2 to 4. And then the next Storytime stream will be on Thursday, where we will be finishing Northanger Abbey. So I'm thinking of doing a game stream after a small break. Do any of you have any requests? I know that, let's see if Josu is still on. I think I saw him on earlier. Taking a look. Because I think he has been waiting for me to play Eichenfell. Okay, he is playing Hades right now. And then, of course, there is RuneScape, which I have been playing a lot lately. And I got, actually, I think I mentioned it on Sunday, that I got membership. I got a year's worth of membership because they had a really good deal going for their 20th anniversary. And I was thinking of doing some of the quests because there are certain goals that I would like to reach, having played it before and having gotten to a very high level. There were some really fun things like easy ways to get about the town and like other things you can unlock. So I have like a list of several different things to do. Anyways, I'm going to end the stream here. If you have any suggestions or requests, please put them in chat, and I'll see the chat when I get back from my break, and then I'll decide what I'm going to play. I'll see you in a moment.